So let us begin with a word of prayer. There are times in our lives, Father, when we don't know which way to go, where some things are being said that are contrary to either what we believe or what we know or what we think. Always, Father, let us come to you and to your word to receive our answer. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, Jesus has left Capernaum, and now he is moving on. Oops, got to get rid of these. And we're going to then go away. Thank you. We'll start with the Gospel of Mark, chapter 3, beginning at verse 20. Mark 3:20. And let's read from 20 to 27. Would I have a volunteer, please?
I can do it.
Sure.
20 through 27. And the crowd came together again, so that they could not even eat. When his family heard it, they went out to restrain him, for people were saying, "He has gone out of his mind." And the scribes who came down from Jerusalem said, "He has Beelzebul, and by the ruler of the demons he casts out demons." And he called to them and spoke to them in parables. "How can Satan cast out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house is divided against itself, that house will not be able to stand. And if Satan has risen up against himself and is divided, he cannot stand, but his end has come. But no one can enter a strong man's house and plunder his property without first tying up the strong man, and indeed the house can be plundered."
Okay. What? Anyone care to question anything or think about or talk about anything?
Well, clearly, if he were Satan, he would not be fighting against Satan.
Okay.
And I mean, that's obvious. And they say he's Beelzebul, which is their word for Satan.
Right.
And clearly he says, "How could I be Satan if I'm doing things that are good?"
It's kind of counterproductive.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Anything here strike you?
Jesus' family was not particularly supportive.
Yeah, at that point, yeah.
Yeah, not particularly supportive. Yes, he's crazy. Let's get him away before they take him out and kill him, because he's a wacko. Yeah, they were not supportive. So don't get the impression that all his family was supportive of him, including his mother, as part of the family. They didn't understand Jesus either. Okay, that's the easy one. Let's go then to see what was added by Luke and Matthew to this story. I'll start in Luke 8:1, and then we have Luke 11. Soon afterwards, he began going around from one city and village to another. So he's on another tour, you see, proclaiming and preaching the kingdom of God. The 12 were with him, and also some women who had been healed of evil spirits and sicknesses. Mary, who was called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out, and Joanna, the wife of Chusa, Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others who were contributing to their support out of their private means. Thoughts, questions, or comments, please?
So he was on too long.
He has a gathering. That's entourage, as you say, yes.
Well, clearly wherever he goes, he's being followed by people because of his works.
Right, but these are the ones who stay with him always, while others come to gather around. This is that, in this particular tour, this is the group he's dealing with. He's got disciples and he's got some women. Okay? And these are not unimportant women.
And they have support for him.
Well, let's put it this way, you gotta eat sometime, somewhere. Okay? And I we'll talk about each one of these women as the time goes by. Okay, Luke 11, 14 to 23. He's going to repeat this demon thing. Okay, so we'll skip that from the Gospel of Luke and go to the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew 12, 22 to 37. Now you have another incident. Then a demon-possessed man who was blind and mute was brought to Jesus, and he healed him, so that the mute man spoke and saw. All the crowds were amazed and were saying, "This man cannot be the son of David, can he?" It's an interesting way of putting it. He can't be the son of David, can he? But when the Pharisees heard this, they said, "This man casts out demons only by Beelzebul, the ruler of demons." And knowing their thoughts, Jesus said to them, "Any kingdom divided itself is laid waste," etc. Okay? So, any questions or thoughts that you want to pursue?
Well, I think with that verse and the previous verse, I don't like to get into relating it to politics, but I think right now one of the biggest things is our house is divided, and we cannot find that comfortable middle ground of where we can converse and find balance. I was reading an article today in the local paper, the Seattle Times, and you were talking about food. And one of the biggest issues right now in eastern Washington, where I grew up, is that very issue. It is probably considered one of the richest areas in the world for growing crops. But the problem is, and has been forever, is the dams on the Snake River and the Columbia River. And right now that is being drawn down so far. And the real issue is, do we continue to allow the farmers to produce the food that the world needs? Or if we do that, it will stop the delivery of the food and other items by the barges, because it'll put the bargemen and their companies out of business.
And
So economically, they need each other, but they can't, for generations, they have not been able to find a balance.
And there's that other part of the balance, which is all the people who want their comforts in their green lawns.
Well,
And
in
using
that
up,
part,
using up the water.
the point I'm making is
Okay.
that they both need the richness of the water.
Correct,
They cannot
Decide.
find the balance.
right.
Because if they give in to give in and say, okay, we're going to just grow crops, then the water needed to raise and lower the locks that allowed the barges to go up and down the rivers can't function to bring the foods in and out.
So what we're seeing is two competing ways of trying to do something, use a resource.
Right, and I'm just relating it back to that verse in the previous where it said similar, in that, God's saying, I give you this, but you've got to find that balance. That's something there's no answer to that.
Okay,
That's all.
okay. Anything else strike you from the stories of the healing and this demon thing and the family problems? Okay, let's walk it through because it's confusing, okay? Does that sound reasonable? Yeah.
Conflict too.
Okay. All right, first of all, I have to tell you that under thoughts, there's something you have to see here, okay? I have made a choice. The event is likely to have taken place in this general area, but any town or village in the area could have been selected. Becerra was selected because it was close to Mount Carmel and showed occupancy according to the archaeological records. I will explain that now. Remember, Jesus would go to places where God had acted before, and then do something to bring the glory back to God, reminding people of what had happened locally. Does that ring a bell with you? Is that still familiar? Does that sound familiar? Remember, for example, he raised the son of the widow of Nain, and it was only a few hundred years earlier that the boy at Shunem was raised, only a few miles away. He's bringing back to their minds what God has done for the people in the past. Therefore, if he's going to bring out this question of Beelzebub and all of that, he's going to want to be somewhere where that's going to remind the locals of something in their tradition. So, therefore, I will choose a particular village, and you'll understand that. Okay? So just hold that in the back of your mind. It's not Basera. It's never mentioned in the Bible. Okay? It's in the local area. Jesus left Capernaum and traveled around Galilee. It said so. He's taking another tour. Okay? With him traveled his disciples, not necessarily all of them, but certainly some of them, as well as others. Some of those who were with him on this journey were women. 3 of these were Mary of Magdala, a widow that Jesus had healed, Joanna, whose husband was the bookkeeper for Herod Antipas, and Susanna. All 3 contributed money to help support this growing ministry of Jesus. Questions, thought, or comments?
I guess I think that bookkeeper of Herod Antipas, when I think about that one, now you've got someone who is on the other side of the argument, and now his servant's wife is supporting this.
Yeah, and I'm sure that it wasn't well broadcast to Herod.
Well, probably not, but in addition to that, at this point, I wonder if Herod even knew that there was an enemy out there, because he didn't know about Jesus. When Jesus was brought to him, whoa, this could cause a disturbance. I need to fix this.
Yes. He had been concentrating so much on John the Baptist, the baptizer. The Jesus one was minor. Mm-hmm. And Jesus wasn't out trumpeting Antipas's problem.
He's trying to stay under the radar.
He's staying under his radar.
Trying to.
I'm not saying he's trying to, but he did. Whether he tried to or not,
Well,
didn't matter.
he would say, don't tell anyone about this.
Well, that's true. He tried to stay under everybody's radar, for that matter, but for other reasons as well. But let's go on with it. Yes. So I want you to look at this that we're not used to seeing, and that is women traveling with Jesus. We think of women in that time of they're there at home, they're restricted, they're not, and yet these women are traveling in the presence of these men they're not married to or related to. That says something about the sociological situation here. It's not all what we always used to think.
But we do know that people would travel in caravans commonly.
But usually with
their
relative.
spouse or something, yeah.
Yeah, or something. So you're having I think you can see that the women are held in higher regard with Jesus and his disciples.
That's still, you talk about the women having to have a relative, that is still an issue in the Middle East today.
Yes.
Hugely. Because they've gone backwards again, and women have to recover. They cannot move out of the house without a relative with them, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
So that tradition has stayed.
Yes, that's true. So, but here it seems to be not as strict. Okay, and I only point that out because it mentions it.
And I wonder if the husband, the bookkeeper, knew that his wife was doing this.
Well, he certainly would have noted that she was gone. Okay. Has she been out gallivanting again? Is she on vacation for another 3 weeks? because it takes time to walk around this place. So, yeah, I don't know what he thought, and it certainly doesn't tell us.
Without knowing these people, he may have thought it was great. She's gone.
Careful, that's putting that. I'm not going there. Okay.
Don't know.
I'm
Either-
going Joanne.
Well, he looks scared, doesn't he?
It didn't say Deanne, did it? Okay, no, okay. All right. Jesus journeyed westward up the valley of Jezreel. Now, to get you a look at that, this is the valley of Jezreel. This is on the southeast corner, looking westward. Jesus would have walked this way up this valley. That's the valley of Jezreel.
Does this connect with the north end of the Great Rift Valley?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
The Mediterranean Sea is here, and this, where the water level was higher, this was the course of the ocean coming down into the Rift Valley
Okay.
and filling the water up originally. So this is actually, in ancient times, a seabed. But with water levels having receded down in the ocean, this became one of the great producers of crops for all of Israel and that whole area. This is where the armies were. Megiddo is down over here to block the passage. This is where everybody came through. Okay? So Jesus is going to walk from the Sea of Galilee over here. He's going to come up this valley and walk this way on his tour. And so that you see it on a map, there's the Sea of Galilee. He walks down and turns up here by Bethshan and comes up here, Bath-shunem in name, and this is that valley of Jezreel right here. Now we'll get that out of the way so we can see it. So he comes down here and he walks this way up the valley. This is the Mount Carmel range here. Okay? Elijah lived at Mount Carmel. Remember in the caves of Elijah? Right here. This was Elijah's territory. So he's coming this way along here. Any questions? Okay, let's find out what happened. Jesus journeyed up the valley toward the Great Sea, the Mediterranean, with the Carmel mountain range off to his left. Okay, so that's here. The Carmel mountains are here. So he's coming up this way. There's Becerra. He was walking beside the Kishon River and past the ruins of Megiddo. Jesus and his disciples entered the small town of Becerra. Remember, please, I introduced that, okay? Where Galilee borders Phoenicia and Judea. Or Samaria as it used to be. In the Roman times, this was Judea. So he's on the border here, okay? Now, does this spot bring up any mind? Any memories, this Elijah thing here? The town of Becerra is snuggled in the foothills only 1 mile north of the Kishon River in the far west region of the Galilee. Go ahead. You had a thought?
Well, I just was thinking about when all of the prophets of Baal were killed, that would have been in a similar area.
Yes! Nailed it! Of two minds. There we go. But in town at that moment were members of the Pharisee party. Oh, when Jesus arrived, a man could not speak and who was blind in his religious walk at the very least, was brought to him. The man's family brought him to Jesus in hopes that he could be healed and become less of a burden to them. Jesus chose to restore his speech. Okay? Now here we go. But in town at that moment were members of the Pharisee party. Because Jesus was known to work on the Sabbath, they could say with confidence that God had not sent Jesus because he was violating God's law while working on the Sabbath, to their interpretation. Okay? Two of them said aloud, such that many nearby could hear, that Jesus healed using the power of Satan. Had to. Can't be God. He's got to be the power of Satan. Knowing that the people from this area were very sensitive about serving any god but Yahweh. Remember? They remembered this Baal thing that happened. A comment like this should convince the people not to believe in Jesus. Oh, Jesus was not going to be happy with that. Jesus, having also heard the slander, responded immediately, recalling to their minds their own local history. Remember the time when Elijah, and if you want to look it up, it's in 1 Kings 18, is the whole story of the prophet Baal and that bunch, and Elijah and Yahweh. Okay? So this is what's being brought to mind, which is why I believe it happened in this area. Okay? The people of Israel, remember that the time when Elijah found the people of Israel had a double mind as Jesus. They could not decide whether to worship Yahweh or Baal. Remember how they finally chose Yahweh and dragged the priests of Baal down from the mountain and killed them just a few miles from here. And when I say down, I do mean down. This is this path here, you can see it. Not that was the path used, obviously. But it switched back going down this way, down from the Carmel range down into the valley. They dragged the 450 prophets of Baal down into the valley near Becerra and slaughtered them. And they were sensitive because they had now followed Yahweh and not Baal. This being of two minds would be a very sensitive issue for them.
Well, I think
Go ahead.
interesting, this is kind of off the subject a little bit. I've been thinking about this and stuff. We used to have, when I was a kid, a millennium ago, a tradition in our country where everything came to a standstill on Sunday.
Yeah,
There
blue laws.
And I can remember in Chelan County on Sunday, you could hear a pin drop. The only voice you heard was the pastor or the leader of the church. And after church, the people that worked at the restaurants, and then you went home.
Right.
And it's amazing to me how we have, and even then when I moved to Lake Stevens, which doesn't seem to be that long ago, 35 years ago now, and Deanne is young enough, she remembers, that tradition somewhat still was going on, because when I first came to Lake Stevens, on Sundays was Sunday, with one exception, and that was Wednesday evenings, because most of the churches, that's when they had their evening fellowship for confirmation and other activities.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing to me how we have moved from that. This is if now Sunday, those traditions have taken a back seat. That they no longer...
Back seat, they're eliminated.
Yeah, okay, however you want to phrase it. Because, it came really headstrong to me. I've said this story before, so I won't get into it too long, but I got into it with my youngest son, William's father's coach. Many years ago when he played soccer, he was a very good soccer player. And his coach very simply wanted to have practice on Sundays. And I remember Bill came home and he was almost in tears. He said, "Dad, what am I going to do?" And I said, "That's okay, because I'm going to talk to the coach." And I just told the coach, I said, "You're going to have with my boy." And he threatened me because he said, "Your kid can't play that." And I said, "Too bad, so sad." He said, "If you wanted him to play,
Yeah.
he would give us that time." But my point is that those traditions, how they have faded.
Yes, the society has changed,
Mm-hmm.
and the concept that we believe in a God or have a church thing is not part of our main culture. It is do whatever you do when you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Go fishing on Friday, on Sunday, go watch football games, but church, no, that's just for the fools. The fool. Okay? The path is narrow that leads to salvation, folks. And most people are not going to find it. Just that's my thinking. Okay. All right. So they dragged them down, and the people here locally remembered all of this. Now see, listen and believe, Jesus told them. I do not cast out demons by Beelzebul. I exercise the power of God just as Elijah did here locally. Jesus and his followers left to continue their journey through Galilee. Anything else? Any other questions, thoughts, or comments?
Sounds kind of gory.
Well, yeah, it was. And the numbers may have been slightly exaggerated with Elijah too. But a decision had to be made, and it had to be a total decision. You can't be of two minds. We can't be of two minds either. Your life has been one where you chose to follow the Lord. Think of all that other stuff that you have not done because of that choice. Okay? And that's true for each of us. You know? So we didn't do it in violence, but sometimes in a culture it happens that way. Okay?
And sin.
But it does sound nasty. It was a real nasty world in those days. Anything else? Okay,
It must have
then,
left,
yes?
it must have left in his trail, in his wake. We don't think that term's, because we don't understand. But I can't help feel that in his wake, that he left so many questions out there, and these people so kind of going, what the heck just swept by us?
Yeah, I believe you're right.
I think of and Ken will laugh when I say this, it reminds me of a hydroplane, and it's smooth in front of the hydroplane in a sense, and it leaves in its wake a mess. And Jesus goes through the valley, preaching and delivering his message, and behind him he leaves this shower of water of the message behind him, and people are kind of going, wait a minute, we've had hundreds of years of the Torah, and now all of a sudden you're just tearing it to shreds and telling us a completely different, what do we do? And I just find that fascinating that it didn't bother him, at least it didn't seem to.
Well, it's because Jesus was at the front of that. And everybody behind him going, I agree with you. The people would have gone, what? And would have had to challenge their lifestyle. And I think that was very difficult for them.
I think it's healthy to challenge our thoughts and our beliefs sometimes. I think we
Painful,
painful,
but healthy.
but I think it's healthy. I think if it's really important, it bears thought.
But if you've been taught a thing all your life, it's hard. And of course you automatically assume that whoever's telling you this thing and leading you this direction is evil. I mean, that's automatic, right?
Or evil or misguided.
Or misguided.
Yeah.
Misguided. I like that one better.
But
all right.
But the point is, I think if it's important, you need to challenge it
Yes.
to see if, am I right?
I believe that's the case for many people, but the fact of the matter is, most people, I call this the majority of people, are not ones that want to question or think. They prefer to be led, and that's difficult for them. They don't know who to follow, so they follow tradition, but that's okay. All right, when next we get together, Jesus is going to be asked to give proof that he is who he says he is.